our actions, our thoughts, our deeds are our prayers in our life moving forward. So why would we want to support things that we now know are hurting people and hurting the environment? So that's where the awareness is. And, that's what I'm focused on, to keep me balanced.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to episode 214 of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for being here today. I am excited you're here, especially if you are a first-time listener. Welcome to the show. If you are a big fan of my guest, I am happy to have you here. And if you are a loyal listener, welcome back. I truly appreciate you. Now, we've been covering a lot of heavy topics lately, and today's episode is kind of along those lines, but also brings a lot of hope, a lot of positivity. And I know many of you have heard me talking about the David Attenborough documentary, I think it's called A Life on Our Planet. And although I was crying like a baby in the middle of the episode, it was very enlightening and it gave me a sense of hope, because to be totally honest with you, I'd been feeling very negative lately. I'd been feeling hopeless and helpless, and I just couldn't see a way out of this problem. And I'm excited that today I have another guest who is going to bring about that positivity. You are going to get to hear about his experience traveling around the world and how his hit show on Netflix has really changed things for many people and made them kind of wake up to what's going on. But before we get to that, before I tell you any more, I just want to say that on Monday, we had the 4th episode of our World's Toughest Race Eco Challenge series episodes. And that was Tash and Nungshi Malik, who were part of Team Kukuri Warriors. They were very inspiring on the show and came across as just two regular girls who are doing this race that was really stretching them to their limits just to finish it. And I found it really inspiring. I love what these two women have done and what they're doing to help women and girls in India to see that they too, and women around the world, can do anything that they believe that they can and, are just as able to as men. So I really enjoyed that one, and I hope you did too. If you are a first-time listener, I hope you go back and check that out and continue to stay and get to know the community. I love to get to know people and yeah. So today I want to introduce you to Darren Orlean, who is a highly recognized exotic superfoods hunter. He's a supplement formulator, and he's an author of the New York Times bestselling book, Super Life, The 5 Fixes That Will Keep You Healthy, Fit, and Eternally Awesome. That kind of sums him up very well. You will get to know him a lot more in the episode. However, he maybe isn't the kind of person that you would have expected based on, as I mentioned, his Netflix show Down to Earth, which he recorded with Zac Efron. He was the co-host with Zac Efron and went traveling around the world. And you're going to get to know Darren in a different way. And I really enjoyed getting to know him in this way. And I think you will too. Now, as this is the final episode before the November 3rd, and most of my listeners are in the US, as well as myself being in the US, I am actually still British citizen and unable to vote in the US. But I really wanted to just ask you, please consider when you are voting this November 3rd, or hopefully many of you have already voted already, vote for the candidate who has demonstrated a commitment to reversing global warming, to protecting our environment, to doing the things that David Attenborough and all these experts who have been screaming it from the rooftops for years. But please, we want to do what we can here, but it's not going to happen without the policy changes. And I know many of you are in a very awkward position, and I feel for you. It is so hard to go against everything you've ever known. But please, for the love of our planet, if you care about this environment, please consider voting for someone who has shown this commitment. And you heard me and Colleen Quigley talking about it a few weeks ago. I encourage you to go back and listen to that episode. She is someone who is taking a stand and speaking out about climate change, about the climate emergency. And if you need a little bit of a nudge, maybe go listen to that episode or the episode with Dr. Margaret Klein Solomon. Just wanted to take a moment. I know this is a tough time and I understand it is hard, but please think of our planet. All right, let's go meet Darin, and I can't wait to hear what you think. Thank you to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. You have heard me talking about this brand every week for months on end now, and there is a reason. I am very picky about the brands that I work with, especially when it comes to apparel, because I know we are not able to buy ourselves that many running products. And if we are buying clothes, we need to be able to know that we can trust the brand, not only the quality of their products and that they're going to last a while, that they're not going to shrink and go weird shaped, or you're going to have to wash them all the time because they absolutely stink. Although we will, as we know, always have to wash running clothes. But Tracksmith clothing, you can get away with a few runs before you have to wash them. But all that to say, for me, it is a very important thing to find an apparel brand that I trust and can just believe in and who cares, and they speak out about things. And Tracksmith absolutely does that. They have made it clear that they want to be a part of dismantling systemic racism. They are really doing more than their part there. They have put out a lot of information about why they want to save college track and field, that they fear that is going to be removed or gone in the future. They are doing things about the importance of Black Lives Matter and all kinds of different scenarios of things that we need to be speaking about and talking about, and not even to mention all the programs that they are doing, the fellowships, the amateur support, and the newsletter that they are constantly giving to this running community. Now, beyond that, they are this Boston-based brand led by a group of runners who are committed to making classically stylish, cutting-edge apparel. Tracksmith designs all of their products to solve the kind of problems that we face. And they only work with the finest materials, from merino wool in their training tops to a unique nylon knit sourced from the best Italian mills for their running shorts. All of their garments feature details that let you focus on the things that matter. Now, I've been telling you about the Brighton base layer, which I absolutely love, this soft, lightweight base layer. It is just seamless to prevent any kind of chafing. I've never had any issues with it. It is tight on your arms while it's a bit loose around the core. So as you warm up in your run, you can still get some cooler air coming in to cool you down. I also am a big fan of the session shorts, which is the shorts they're comfortable. They have a really nice lightweight feel to them. They're lightweight knit. They can handle quite a few wears. They are not too long, but not too short, with a 3 1/4 inch inseam. The shorts feature an exposed elastic waistband that sits very snugly at your waist. These are my favorite shorts that Tracksmith makes. And my friends, you as a Running for Real listener can get $15 off your order of $75 or more by using code TINA15 at checkout at tracksmith.com, or you can go to tinamuir.com/tracksmith and you can see my favorite items. You can click right through without having to search around for it. So go to tinamuir.com/tracksmith. I want to thank Tracksmith and can't wait to hear what you think. Darin, thank you so much for joining me today on the Running for Real podcast. Welcome. I'm excited to have you.
I'm excited to run down the rabbit hole with you.
But you're not a runner, are you, technically? Did I hear you say that you don't particularly like running?
Not anymore. I used to do triathlons, biathlons. I had a good running stint. And then just, knee surgeries and stuff like that from the past. It got to a point where beating on, I'm 200 pounds, 90 kilos. And it just I like sprinting. So now I just run and sprint and functional
train. It's technically running though. So you're still,
for sure. So technically I love running.
But when you're friends with Rich Roll and he's talking about doing Ultraman events, it seems like nothing then.
That's where I will give him that, and then I'll bring him in I'll do other things with him, and but now he's taking a little break. He's actually working on some strength stuff. So
I heard that.
I'm kind of stoked for him.
So curious. I wasn't going to ask you this, but as you mentioned it, you said about knee surgeries. Would you go back and do that again?
Have a knee surgery?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was
necessary. Mm-hmm. I had, it was in 96 maybe. So I had a full tear of my ACL, and then it kept dislocating. So my full knee dislocated about 20 times. Fully came out, and I had to pop it back in. And
Oof.
And then that kind of wore down my meniscus.
Yeah.
So then my meniscus tore pretty good. So then they had to go back in. So eventually then I tried to get it just strong, but without that ACL, it just was slipping out of place. And so I used the patellar graft surgery. And then, so I needed the stability. It was just not working.
Yeah, no, that makes sense in that situation. I was just curious because I have heard people say they had that done and then kind of regretted it in some situations, but glad to hear that you're not one of those. All right, so the formulator of Shakeology, the co-host, most people are going to know you as the co-host of Down to Earth, which is a Netflix series with Zac Efron, which is where I first heard of you, and was immediately interested as the show kind of focused on alerting the mainstream, just everyday person to the environmental crisis. Now, we've shared a lot about that topic on this podcast, so I'm not going to go over the same things again. And for new listeners, I have an episode with Dr. Margaret Klein-Solomon, episode 206, which I recommend you go back and listen to. But first, I want to dive into your story a bit, Darren, being that you come across in the series as this very California, they put you across as almost this like kooky guy who Zac is like the normal one in the way that they show you. But you're from Minnesota, so that's definitely not California. So, it's hard to imagine that you not being from California. How did you end up in California from Minnesota?
Well, Minnesota will beat you down long enough. So it was my senior year in college where it was about, I don't know in Celsius, but it was 60 to 90.
My audience is American, so mostly American.
Okay. So 60 to 90 below wind chill for about a week. And then I was kind of, the bell went off. I'm like, why would I stay here if I have a clean slate? So then I actually... So finish up physiology, nutrition, and then basically the day after graduation, I jumped on my Harley Davidson and rode to Boulder, Colorado, where I lived there for about 7 years. I apprenticed with the exercise physiologist, Dale Greenwald. We joined forces, did a lot of rehabilitation training, did a lot of work individually with people. Started digging into, from the University of Colorado, functional food information from an incredible doctor friend of mine. And so the nutritional side was starting to build up. And then I ultimately was very curious about kind of the relation between someone's point of view, their consciousness as it relates to their health and their healing. So then I got a master's in psychology, because that's an eternal fascination, I think, between just who we are and what we are and how we operate, both as a human and as a spiritual being. So, and then eventually I just kind of felt like I needed to move on and came to California in 2000. I then quickly kind of jumped on a trip to India, spent about 6 weeks in India. And then that's where I really got clear about my nutritional side, where I was dabbling around. I was looking at plants. I was looking at salts. I was looking at formulation. I was not happy with how people were, saying one thing about a plant and then having a poor quality food or ingredient. So then I just realized that I was seeing something that I could do something about, and really then started traveling extensively for the mere understanding of back to my Minnesota roots. It really came down to my dad was, number one, my family rolled out to Minnesota and South Dakota on covered wagons, a bunch of Norwegians. And so all my family, my cousins and everything are farmers. And my dad was an ag professor at the University of Minnesota. So for me, the journey of kind of hunting herbs was really just because I needed to meet the people. I needed to understand how they were cultivating, growing, foraging, collecting. How did that actually translate into a product, into a powder, into a pill? And then the more I learned, the more the more I learned, and the more I realized how delicate that whole thing is, and how amazing the kind of ethnobotanical approach of like.
You might have to explain that. Yeah.
yeah. So the ethnobotanical approach is really the idea that, the culture of the people, how a plant was used historically, how it was cultivated, how that interacts with the environment, what if anything could be cultivated and preserved within the culture, and then also how can this be better for the environment, not worse. That's always a tricky thing as you're scaling anything. And so for me, it very much, even though you wanted like we even featured in the Amazon and Down to Earth, we talked about camu, but okay, well, how do you do that? How do you get it from this wild place, make sure that high vitamin C is still high as it becomes a powder and dried and cultivated? And then how is that fair for the people who are gathering it? How is that good for the environment? How can that be how can we use that as a lens to create systems that are ultimately better than just, this normal kind of fatal flaw that we've had as humans, and that is just take without the understanding of this larger view, this generational approach. And so even though I don't have it perfect, but it is my desire to always look in that way. And so that's ultimately what got me into, that next phase of formulating and things.
Yeah. And you've been going through this. We'll talk about that a bit later yourself, in terms of bringing a product to market, a Baruka nut, which most people listening, or many people listening, may not have heard of, but we'll talk about that in a little while. But just going back a little bit further, coming from Minnesota, having spent time in Colorado, other places, now Boulder, and where you are now, kind of Malibu, California area, are both pretty forward. I don't want to say forward thinking, but they're both kind of open-minded and kind of come as you are. You're going to eat really well. People are going to take care of their bodies. But do you put yourself back in your Minnesota roots quite a lot to remind yourself that even though you're surrounded by people who are like you, that there are other, that's not how everyone lives?
100%. And, I don't think it's wise to forget where you're from. It's helpful to have brothers and sisters, and my mom's still around, and it's helpful to have them and have them be a family. But every time, even writing a book or even any sort of communication, I'm always doing the best I can, putting it through the lens of how my brother is going to hear that, how my sister-in-law is going to hear that, how my mom is going to hear that. And then really as my father was such a great teacher in that way, how would he, demonstrate that? And then always through the lens of the passion for me, always through the heart. And if you come through the heart, instead of trying to tell people what to do or lecture people or, try to convince them of your point of view, I think that's a horrible approach. And we have so many of those kind of things always going on. I'm just sharing my passion, what works for me and what I've seen in the world. And through that little example and story, this is what works for me. Yeah. And this is what I've seen. And if people resonate with that, then great. And that's kind of a little bit of what you're talking about in the beginning about the show. I can answer that if you want, that little bit of kind of downplaying.
Go for it.
Yeah. So that was a great example, because kind of moving, as I spent my career around the world a few times, naturally become an environmental supporter, naturally, because you see where things don't work and you see where things work. And you also, I've gotten to run into some incredible inventors and thinkers and people that have been dedicated to this for their entire life. And so I've naturally become aware of water, power, food, shelter in far off places, because I've seen it. I've seen kids, trying to find water and not dying. in the middle of nowhere. So when it came to the show, I obviously had a lot of point of view. I had scripted out what I thought the show should start to be about, because the topic is just infinite, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to talk about things that fascinated me. And for us, from water to food systems to other ways of growing and community and et cetera, all the way down to picking up trash and what trash is doing. And it was, if it was left, let me just say this, if it was left up to me to deliver that full message, I think it would have blasted people out of, it would have been too intense. It would have been too unrelenting in terms of the information, in terms of the level of information. And so it was that it wasn't easy. I had to surrender 100 different times of how are we going to tell this story? What are we going to say? I let go of 90% of the colleagues that I was going to have in the show because we needed to have it be lighter. We needed to have this fun part. We needed to have all this stuff. And yeah, to your point, they started editing. Like, listen, I do have I have a absolutely fun essence of me. And I just kind of on the side when I'm out, when I'm in my zone, I'm silly and goofy but incredibly passionate and aware of these things too. But they ended up keeping a lot of that obviously silly and lightheartedness. And I just had to kind of let that hard information go. There were several times in the show where even Mayor Cruz in Puerto Rico, I had a lot of ideas and solutions and possibilities for Puerto Rico, still do, but I communicated a lot of that stuff. But it was just, the more you talk, the more you have to substantiate and demonstrate and show that whole story.
Yeah.
And it just became too much. And so as we didn't even really have the show sorted out in terms of how we were going to tell the story. The story kind of came later in terms of how the story is put together. And so I just had to let go. And I was extremely nervous because, listen, I didn't want to be this dude who was with this celebrity and didn't have the show be meaningful and powerful and impactful and deliver on that information. Now, maybe your listeners and other podcasts I've done and people that are in this space, they would want more information. For sure. I would have wanted more information, but that's not the intent. The intent.
We've already got those people, right? Yeah.
100%. And I think a lot of documentaries, I see it now more clearly. If it wasn't for the production team who deeply cared, that didn't come from this place, that were, yes, protective of Zac to not go too heavy without us doing enough homework, to be ready to deliver messages, we had to be conservative. And so, again, we would have just been talking to ourselves, that same pod of people. And I really learned a lot by the incredible team that we had of how to tell a story in a way that reached over and grabbed people that weren't expecting to be inspired. They weren't expecting to learn about the environment. They weren't expecting to learn about their health. They weren't expecting to learn to see something that they didn't see, because we weren't talking at them. It was a way of like, we're having fun, but we're on a mission and we're here to learn, just like you. So I had to take my ego of travel and knowledge. I had to stick a lot of it, just stick a lot of it away, to also just, it was beautiful because I could just open up and be a student, even though some of it I knew, but I absolutely didn't know it all. And I absolutely learned a lot myself. Yeah, and some of it was in the show and some of it wasn't, but it doesn't matter because it's touched people. It was one of the most successful Netflix shows out. And it's like, man, if it would have been up to me, it wouldn't have had that same vibe. And so I'm grateful for that extremely.
how does that make you feel now, knowing that, it's so hard for us to accept that we don't have all the answers, especially like for you, this is an area you care about, you're passionate about, you've learned about, but to accept, you do meditate. I've heard you talking about that. So that obviously, I'm assuming, is a part of it. I shouldn't say obviously, but how does that make you feel now, knowing that?
Relieved that I am not in control. And true. I am a control freak for sure. I in one part of my being, I definitely like to create. I like to push forward. I like to have several businesses that no one even knows about yet. So, it's so from that perspective, leading without control and being able to surrender to a bigger vision, a bigger dream, a bigger, it's that whole thing without sounding cheesy. It's surrendering yourself over to something a lot bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
And that's not being pushed over or pushed aside or walked on. I felt protected. I felt as it grew into this family on the road and the people that at production that were in the offices, like who led this march from a production standpoint, I felt heard to the degree. I felt cared for. And I think that became a family. So the more that happened, the more I could let go and trust the process. Doesn't mean that I wasn't extremely nervous when it was coming out. So how it makes me feel now is the immediate response was I was relieved with how much people responded. And now my heart is just elated with joy every day. Getting, and probably the most exciting for me is it's only the tip of the iceberg in terms of the mission, because this was all about a mission, not about a TV show. So the work that I've been doing after has been so rewarding. The people that have reached out in companies I didn't know about that are doing extraordinary things. I've been 24/7 working on those things. So man, if that's the start and the spark, man, I can't wait for the rest of this stuff to get out in the world and to mature. And listen, season 2 is being negotiated. So hopefully all that works out and we continue on that mission. But again, it's within the mission. It's part of the mission. It's not the total mission.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I want to get into that in just a second. But before we get into that side of things, you just said about all these opportunities, and I can only imagine what's coming up. And I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure the only reason that you're here talking to me right now was because I jumped on you early. Because I can only imagine the amount of invites you're getting to come on shows right now. So, I mean, thankfully I was in that first wave of people to watch and see it, but how are you protecting yourself in it? Because, for most people listening, I mean, you were well known, you within your circle, you had a following, you had a tribe, you had a book, you had all that kind of stuff going for you. But for most people listening, it's hard to imagine shooting from kind of, I'm somewhat well known to I'm, what people see. I'm best friends with Zac Efron and I'm a global superstar now. How have you protected yourself and your heart with all these things coming up?
I think that good question. There's times where I've hyperventilated, not physically, but they're, trying to grasp it all, get it all, do it all. It's hard for me to say no to cool things and to great opportunity. So I've been learning balance in that way. I have said no a lot. And I just, the tuning fork is that inner, the inner space, the inner voice. And so literally I'm just going off of instinct. And I can't see every message. I can't, which drives me crazy because I actually want to respond to everybody. But when you're talking about Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, it's literally impossible. So I just, for anyone who has sent me a message, I am very sorry because I cannot. I've tried. And so that has been a boundary because I have things I need to do. I have things that I'm called to do. So, and so that's been a little bit, I've been taking a lot of meetings. I've been cultivating, curating. I've put a team around to help with kind of vetting relationships, vetting technologies, vetting businesses, vetting relationships. And then I'm just trusting that what I'm seeing, meaning what is coming in is supposed to come in. But yeah, it's certainly a little difficult.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, I think it's kind of, many people see it as the dream. You know, you have all these opportunities. It's the thing that people crave the most. And I'm not going to lie, you know, part of me feels that way too. But are there any, you'd say, downsides at this point? You said you were excited about the opportunities, and of course you are, with the steps that you can take in fulfilling your mission. But are there any downsides?
No. I mean, it is something that I'm glad I've cultivated a lifetime of inner work, because that is my home. Mm-hmm. So as long as I go home every day and listen through my heart and let my mind be fed in that way, and then take breaks. I got to, you know, thank God I live in nature. I have a dog that demands to be run. And so my day is spent, with no shoes on, running around outside with my dog. And so I'm in nature, which is just medicine. So no downside. I mean, my biggest downside is literally there's not enough of me. There's not enough time to find everything, to link everything, to discover everything, but that's a good problem to have. Yes. And I think the biggest thing is, I literally just go back to, I am on a mission to help people health, to help the environment in any way that I can. And those two things are fueling everything.
You are hearing Darren talk about the importance of health, about the importance of looking after our bodies. And, you know, Darren lives in Malibu, California, with access to all these amazing things. And I love that he is putting himself in the minds of his family and other people who are not necessarily able to get the products that they need. That being said, I understand, being a mother of two young ones living in St. Louis, where I don't have access to the same kind of health products that Darren mentioned, that it's not as easy as it sounds to truly look after your body and the environment. That is where I feel Athletic Greens comes in perfectly. And I don't say that lightly. I really genuinely believe in this product. Athletic Greens Ultimate Daily is the all-in-one daily supplement with 75 vitamin, minerals, and whole food source ingredients that work together to help the body absorb and synthesize these nutrients in a highly bioavailable form. It was originally developed for athletes and high performers. Just one scoop of Athletic Greens Ultimate Daily delivers adaptogens, antioxidants, prebiotics, probiotics, a superfood complex that helps support the body's nutritional needs across critical areas of health, including energy, immunity, digestion, and recovery. Now, you hear Darren and I talking about the difference between going to get a juice where it comes in a plastic container or not having the juice. But if you are using Athletic Greens, you don't need to worry about that as much, because now you are getting those nutrients, you are getting those ingredients without the plastic container. You can do one scoop of this. You can give it a shake in a glass jar, or if you have any other kind of tumbler or whatever you want to use, and then you can just drink it down. I have it first thing when I wake up in the morning or after my workouts on the days I have workouts, and you are good to go. There are very few stomach upsets. I haven't fallen sick in a while. I have this peace of mind that I'm getting this comprehensive nutrition to support this lifestyle that I now have. It helps maintain healthy skin, healthy hair, healthy nails, and adaptogens are healthy for helping to maintain hormone levels and to support your mood, which I know is something important to many of my listeners who came to find me because of my amenorrhea journey. You are going to hear me and Darren talking about the importance of health on us as humans as we approach these coming years that are going to be a bit tough. So you can go to athleticgreens.com/Tina to go get a 1-year supply of vitamin D3 K2 with your order. That's a 1-year supply by going to athleticgreens.com/Tina. The vitamin D is something we are definitely going to need over the winter months as it is cooler, as there is less sun out, and as we are not able to be outside for as long. So you can go to athleticgreens.com/Tina to find out more.
I mean, my biggest downside is literally there's not enough of me. There's not enough time to find everything, to link everything, to discover everything, but that's a good problem to have. Yes. And I think the biggest thing is I literally just go back to I am on a mission to help people health, to help the environment in any way that I can. And those two things are fueling everything.
Yes. Well, thank you. So going into what we were talking about a minute ago, for those who haven't watched it yet, in which case go watch it right now. Pause the recording. No, you can watch it afterwards. You've traveled around the world highlighting things other countries are doing to create a sustainable future. Now that got me excited, but it also kind of left me feeling pretty deflated at the state of things in America and how this is something I am too, like you, am obsessed with. I've said before, barely a minute or two goes by without me thinking about it. But I got, I just felt a bit sad that I just can't see how things are going to move fast enough. Now, you'd done all the traveling before this show. You'd kind of seen these things. But how are you feeling about the future of America? You live this sustainable, simple life, but being out and around, even in the airport side of things, would have shown you, we've got a long way to go. How are you feeling just in general?
Well, I'm definitely an optimist, and it's all where the attention, where the gaze of the eyes, the gaze of the heart, it's where your attention resides that is going to cultivate the energy and the magnetic field that you're going to be in, live in, and also bring in. So, gosh, 2020 certainly can find a lot of material to get really bummed out, right? And I for sure have had my own ups and downs with it. I think that is the human experience. But I'm going to sit with that. I'm going to be with those emotions. I'm going to allow that to happen. I'm not going to judge it. And through that process, I will gaze and go back to the optimistic side of myself. The more I've known a lot of things, I've been around some guys doing some and girls doing some incredible things, both internally, externally, power, water, food, shelter. And now more and more answers are coming to me more than ever because of the show and several things. So I am more optimistic now, even in the state of the world. I believe that I'll just say this about the state of the world. I think there's some alignments that need to be changed. I think there's a tension, individuals, corporations, countries, politics that needs to be shifted. I think the darkness is seen more, it's revealed, and there needs to be more light in the world. So I ultimately believe this time is an absolute correction of our trajectory.
Yeah.
And that is a plea to no politician, to no political stance. That is a plea to the people of following your heart, following your joy, and knowing and going after what fulfills you and what fulfills our communities and what fulfills our countries and all of those things. Solving problems that are bipartisan, solving water, power, food, so that people can have sovereignty, so you can have sovereignty. This is also isn't the rejection of an individual's sovereignty of being able to produce their own food, to be able to produce their own power, literally being able to produce and cultivate their own water and collect their water. This is all, I believe, the goal of any person. And so that's where my focus is. Mm-hmm. I am not under the delusion that any person, any government, anything is going to create my life to be better or worse. I just believe that the power of people and the power of numbers and the power of collaboration, moving in those directions, solving problems, cutting off, that famous kind of YouTube video of pulling that straw out of the turtle's nose. If anyone's seen that, it's one of the most powerful things. And literally a straw was shoved up just in nature, shoved up this turtle's nose, and these people found this turtle, and they didn't ask who each other was. They didn't ask what they believed in. They didn't ask if they were climate changers. They didn't ask what political division they were. They got together, they got this turtle, and they pulled the straw out of this turtle's nose, and this turtle was free from the pain and the suffering. Mm-hmm. That's where my focus is. That's what the whole thing is. And people can fight all they want. I'm not interested in fighting and wasting energy and all of that other stuff. I just want to get a team and a tribe and a group of people together that care and move towards solutions that help people's lives.
Thank you so much. I love that explanation. And I mean, it's true. Why are we wasting energy on worrying about things that at the end of the day, we have no control? People can vote, but that's exactly. Beyond that, it's up to you to make your own joy and make your own life. And that actually works on nicely to what I wanted to focus on in this episode. One of the things I felt you said about reaching across the aisle that really was kind of eye-opening for me that I hadn't thought about, but I think I've heard a few people mention it, was when you covered, or when the series covered about Q-tips, about you were in England, actually, I think, picking up trash, and there was all these Q-tips, and the guy you were with said that was one of the worst things that he came across was all the Q-tips. And that's a good example of something that is so damaging, but something that the average person now, whenever they pick up a Q-tip, what are they going to think about? That's where that's going. So that was the best example to me to summarize it, reaching out across the aisle. But I want to focus today on single-use plastic. That's one of your big focuses. And obviously that means plastic water bottles, Ziploc bags, things like that. But what do you define a single-use plastic as?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously the ones that we use in a literally the single use. So like you buy a water bottle, you drink the water bottle, you throw it away. You get a grocery bag, a plastic bag, you put your groceries in it, you go home and you throw it away. On and on and on. So that whole area is, God, what's the stat on it? It's 80-90% of our world's plastic, and it's just the numbers. I think it's now 9 billion metric tons of plastic.
Between 8 and 9. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So every bit of plastic is still on the planet, and unless you're in, these currents that show up in Southeast Asia and Bali and things like that, where you see it all over in their waterways and in the ocean, and yes, Americans, etc., ship our plastic to Malaysia now that we've been cut off by China. It's also, and there's a point to this because we're in a delusion. The delusion is that I separate all of my plastic and I put that in the, we call it here the blue bin. We put it in our blue bin. We bring it out to the curb, and these trucks come and they take the recycle and they take the regular trash, and we just feel better. Mm-hmm. We did our part. I'm not bashing. Like, I still think separating plastic from other garbage is extremely beneficial. So I'm not bashing that. But the delusion is that only 9% of all of the 9 billion metric tons of plastic in the world is recycled. And I would probably argue that that's probably inflated too. So the majority of everything that you're separating as an individual, and you think it's taken away and it's in a recycling bin, so therefore it's going to be recycled.
And you've done your part.
Exactly. You've done your part. It's not in front of your face anymore, so you feel good about it. But the majority of all of that, the 91% of that, is being dumped right in the earth and sitting there, and then proliferating that into our aquifers and the petroleum and the plastics and the chemicals and the estrogen effects of that plastic is now in our waterways. So, et cetera. So, and not breaking down. So everyone, the reality that you're recycling is not being recycled. Mm-hmm. And so we have to turn off the faucet. We have to turn off the faucet of the use of single-use plastic, and we have to do it in a big way, but it's almost impossible. But where it isn't impossible is companies scaling at a way that isn't, unfortunately, we have to meet economy where it's at, or at least close to it. So companies are controlled by their boards. They're controlled by profits. It is so far down the rabbit hole in that way. It's so cheap to create new plastic. Mm-hmm. There's no incentive. So number one, we have to demand, of course. So number one, we have to demand our companies switch, and that there is a turn, and more companies are doing that, switching to even using plastic in their containers and their deodorants and their toothbrushes, and now there's also bamboo Q-tips and et cetera. So we as individuals can change that. And I'll be happy to say that there are some great companies that are scaling in very big ways that are dealing with, and one company is called Footprint, and it is a company that you would never know about because it's not in the marketplace as an individual, B2C business. It is B2B business because it's dealing with its customers. Literally today are Cargill, Pepsi, McDonald's, and they are literally creating non-plastic single-use items for these big companies to change. And they're literally doing that by the billions and billions and billions. And so, they're a little more expensive, but these companies know that our pressure of us as individuals is important for these companies to market back to us. And so regardless of the motivation, these companies are wanting to do it. And there are some good people in these big companies wanting for those changes. So I'm proud to know now Footprint exists as a company that's changing single-use plastic and providing a scalable opportunity for some of the big boys that are producing most of the plastic on the earth. Mm-hmm. So there is some encouragement, but again, there is a lot of benefit that we can have on the environment. And I always have to say, there's so much benefit that you can have as an individual, because if you don't use these single-use plastics, you're not being exposed to, from receipts having Teflon-like chemicals on it, from plastics having estrogen mimicking compounds in them, affecting men's fertility and women's fertility, and pharmaceutical. I mean, so many chemicals, and it's petroleum, it's oil, it's gas. Mm-hmm. That's what plastic's made from. So if we don't expose ourselves from it, our life is better. And by us not exposing ourselves and our children to those single-use plastics, we're also then shutting that off for the environment. So I always want to make that distinction. So the microcosm and the macrocosm is being changed by our individual choices.
Yes, thank you for explaining that. All right, two things with that. One, you said about the big companies. Does any part of you worry with that about, the term natural was kind of should be, the what it should mean is not what it means on food products. Does any part of you worry about that they're going to kind of find a way of finding a loophole, essentially?
Well, in terms of making single-use plastic?
Yeah, I mean,
or
either like just cutting corners within that process to kind of keep their expenses down.
Well, that's without a doubt. They're already doing that stuff. I mean, I mean, those big businesses that are already in this market know that they've exposed the environment to so many chemicals, and they're going to always try to find loopholes. You know, I've done a lot of research with the Environmental Working Group. I've done a lot of research exposing some of these chemicals in my Fatal Convenience episodes and the podcast, which is something I'll continue to do. And however, like the company like Footprint, I've actually talked to the CEO. I've known what these guys are doing. So I feel extremely confident in their process of them providing different choices for these big companies to do it. We just need them in these bigger companies to make more of those choices. The more they make those choices, the more a company like this Footprint can scale, and then it will be less and less a barrier to entry in terms of cost.
That's true.
And the more we put pressure on people and saying, great product, we just don't want to use it because you're unsustainable, then that also is a pressure. And the more awareness we have about it, the more these companies will want to put money into this because they won't want to be left behind. They will need that marketing story. They actually need that marketing story now. And of several companies, even through the down to earth things, there's some big companies that we worked with for the show. And even now, they really want to stay on the message. They really want to work with me and work with Zac. And like, you know, I'm not saying yes to all of them, but moving them forward in a good way. Some of those big entities, even Visa, for example, is helping small businesses, right? So they're starting to see and help out into supporting small businesses at a time where we really, really need it. You know, who knows about that? Not many people, but that's actually something they're working very hard on. So the point is that, is it perfect? Is it a long way? For sure. But we have to, you know, do the best we can. We have to keep moving because it's also, what else is the choice?
Yeah.
Because it's like, man, like our actions, our thoughts, our deeds are our prayers in our life moving forward. So why would we want to support things that we now know are hurting people and hurting the environment? So that's where the awareness is, and you know, that's what I'm focused on, to keep me balanced instead of being depressed by all of the crazy crap that we've done for a very long time, you know? So it's astonishing, from EPA to FDA to USDA to FCC. It's amazing to me, astonishingly amazing that these entities literally, maybe they're doing a few things, but I haven't seen them act very competently in terms of protecting our interests, in terms of keeping our environment safe.
And that's something you've covered in your Fatal Conveniences podcast episodes. And I will put links in the show notes for anyone to go check that out. And maybe a link to Footprint as well for people if they want to read more. Actually, on that note, yesterday a friend sent me a picture of a Marie Callender's plant-based pot pie. And my first thought was anger. Like, really, is this company, you know, this is what they're doing? But then I thought, you know what? If they're putting out a pot pie that's vegan, then that's the fake chicken, then they're obviously getting enough pressure to have to make that change. So even though that irritates me, it's a step in the right direction. So I guess we've got to take the little wins. Now, you've made it clear that health is very important to you. And we're talking about single-use plastic here. But what about for someone listening who right now is saying, I have a crazy life. I don't have time to get foods from the source. So if it's the choice between me getting a single-use plastic juice product where I can get 20, I'm just trying to survive right now. I'm just trying to look after my health right now. I can get kale, I can get ginger, I can get lemon, I can get cayenne or whatever in my juice, but it's a single-use container. And I want to add one more caveat. A lot of places are not accepting reusable things right now. So they can't bring their own thing. What would be your choice there?
Listen, I don't give yourself a hard time. If you're just struggling to get by and you're making an effort, we can't pretend that we can be perfect. And we can't pretend that the plastic literally is in everything. And so, number one, judgment is the last thing we need, and shame in ourselves is the last thing we need. That's more poisonous than if we can make that choice literally in that second or not. So I would just say, number one, we have to be more kind to ourselves. We don't want to do this out of shame and guilt, and we do the best we can. So if the company doesn't have glass bottles and they're put it in plastic, and you really want that juice, then that's your choice. Make that choice now. But I think moving forward, what can you do next time? Juice your own stuff. From a water perspective, just as this is an example, a lot of people say, I need to bring water. I need to bring it with me. I need to, whatever that is. You can get a RO system or a distillation system. You can create your own water, add a pinch of Himalayan salt to it so that it's positive electrolytes, and then just get a glass bottle. And you never have to deal with plastic again. Fill it up, take it with you. Now you've just eliminated that big side of the massive single-use plastic in the world. And then whenever possible, if you're out, spend a little extra money on a glass bottle if you don't have water with you. Just spend that little extra. Normally, the ones in glass bottles are, I can't say this across the board, but some of them are, better spring-fed glass, and you're going to just be a little better because you have better quality. So stay away from the really, really soft plastic on anything, especially close to water or beverages or around food, because that really does bleed into your food. It means that it also has more of these estrogen-like compounds. That's what makes it soft. So definitely, and please do not use styrofoam in hot coffees and hot food in plastic. Like, that is just a poisonous idea, because literally you're just creating an opportunity for plastic to leach into your food at a huge rate. Think of it like
styrofoam has plastic in it as well.
Oh my God. It's mostly oil and petroleum and things like that. So
I guess I've never thought about it.
Oh, it's horrible.
I really, like you, I avoid it at all costs. And I actually wrote to a food chain last year, because they still were using styrofoam cups, even when I was eating in the restaurant. And I was like, this is ridiculous. There's no need for this. And they said, well, yeah, it's in our 5-year plan. Won't be using styrofoam by 2025. And I was like, are you kidding me? So yeah, I definitely feel you with styrofoam, but I guess I hadn't really thought about what it was made of, other than I know it could not be recycled in any capacity. Or very few places. All right, so let's talk about you with what we were just talking about there. Now, when you were filming, you must have been going through airports or traveling through countries. I know, being from England, that England is maybe a few steps ahead of America, but not very far ahead. That you must have come through places that didn't have many vegan or unpackaged items. You said yourself you're a control freak, and I'm assuming you brought some food with you, but how did you negotiate that situation? Or, traveling in general, how do you negotiate that?
Well, again, you do the best you can in terms of, sticking on the water bottle. Like, I'd rather be healthy and hydrated than dehydrated and miserable and affect my health. So as soon, I bring my glass bottle with me. So I get, a Fiji water, Smart Water, or whatever, and then I dump it out. I let it sit in glass and try to just not stay in plastic. And then you do the best you can. I mean, they won't let you bring liquids in, so there's not much you can do. I also bring filters with me so I can filter water. vortators, structuring devices. I have all kinds of things for water. In terms of food, I always have kind of snacks. Obviously, I bring my barukas. I bring, cacao wafers. I bring my elixirs and adaptogens and medicinal mushrooms. So like usually one whole suitcase is full of like superfoods and tinctures and herbs and things like that for sure. But in terms of food, you can get anything almost anywhere. I've been, in the middle of nowhere and I can get rice and beans and some greens or something, it's like, and if it's in a situation where it's just horrible food or it's on the airplane, I usually, if I take a long leg, I bring all my food with me. Like literally I've packed a salad in a mason jar, stuffed it in there with the dressing, with my barukas, and I've made a whole bunch of food I'm going to have on the plane. So that's
you mean you don't like airplane food?
I do not. No.
I do. I don't know anyone that likes
surprise, right?
Yeah.
So from that perspective, I always bring food when I travel. And if I don't, and if I am in a place where I don't have food and it literally is the detriment of my health and it's horrible and whatever, I will use that opportunity to fast. So I will, I can easily fast for a day, 16 hours, whatever. And I would rather fast and use that as a healing opportunity than expose myself to unknown food or additives or whatever. So it's quite, I mean, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it kind of is not that difficult.
Hey friends, I want to tell you about our Black-owned business of the week, which is Team Onyx. Now, if that sounds familiar to you, it is because that was the team that Corey Waltering was on for the World's Toughest Race Eco Challenge Fiji. And they not only feature the 4 athletes that you saw in that Fiji Eco Challenge, but there's also many other athletes they have on their team in this Black-owned business, and they are hopefully going to be competing in the Patagonia World's Toughest Race. But there's plenty of stuff for us to look at on the Team Onyx website, which is at team-onyx.com. That's team-onyx.com. They have apparel on there, so you can go to support the team by getting yourself some stuff, including a nice buff that you could wear during this time where we do have the pandemic and are trying to use masks and cover our faces. There's also hoodies and all kinds of cool stuff on there. You can learn more about the team and what they're up to, their news, their events. You can see the sponsors, the brands that are working with them, which is really cool. And just do your part to support this Black-owned business who are doing their part to really grow the awareness of Black athletes in adventure racing and all kinds of sports. Corey, as we mentioned, is primarily a runner, so that is another cool way you can support him. So you can go to team-onyx.com to go find out more. And yeah, go check them out.
And I would rather fast and use that as a healing opportunity than expose myself to unknown food or additives or whatever. So it's quite, I mean, I wouldn't say it's easy, but it kind of is not that difficult.
Do you let yourself stay relaxed about it? If you're getting to a situation where maybe things aren't ideal and it's, you're having to make the choice between a plastic something or fasting or trying to figure something out. How do you said you're a control freak, and I just want to, a lot of my listeners or many of my listeners have been through eating disorders, so I want to be very careful here.
Yeah.
But, the control side of you, how do you kind of let that go when you're in a situation?
Well, when I say control, these things are so habitual inside of me. So it takes very little effort for me to really obsess about things. So I don't really obsess about my food anymore. It's kind of automated. And so, everyone in the group, everyone on the crew, whoever I'm with knows that I'm eating the best I can. So they will be aware of finding plant-based stuff and whatever. And if there isn't a place, I will look on a menu and say, okay, well, keep this off. Here, give me a salad, give me a thing. And if it's in terms of like plastic stuff, well, you just don't take, I'll just take that. I'll hold that. I won't take the bag. You just do the best you can. But I literally, every time I literally don't stress about it anymore. Mm-hmm. I also am aware that I am taking a piece of plastic that I have no choice in. This is the way it is. This is the way it's coming. That affirms my bigger picture. Even jumping on a plane, flying around the world, clearly that's not sustainable. But, there's, tankers that are going back and forth across the ocean are one of the worst polluters in the world that no one talks about. So, and I am working on projects with that in particular. So there's several things that I know that I am doing that it's not a justification, because I still try to do the best I can, but at least in a lifetime that I know there's so many things that could be done better, I'm at least attuning and putting action towards those things to help in any way that I can. I'm not just sitting back posting Instagram of like, change your ways. I'm literally, I'm spending my life in the best way that I know how, always looking for solutions for some of this stuff. So that helps. But just can't get around it sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Well, I for one want to thank you for saying that, because hearing you say that is giving me some peace, having been someone who, let's say we pick our restaurants that we get takeout from, the ones that have compostable packaging, because I figure if that's the best I can do. But then sometimes I always say I don't want plasticware with it. Sometimes they put it in anyway, or they put some kind of package something in there. And I find myself getting so worked up because I'm like, I told you not to put it in there and you put it in there anyway. And now I've got this plastic in my house and I don't want it in my house. But you're making me see that what is the point of me getting stressed about that? It's done. It's, I can put it aside and maybe use it for an emergency or something. But yeah, I'd been beating myself up a lot about little things. And I'm sure everyone listening has, they're in a pinch. Their 14-year-old child is saying they're thirsty and they want a Gatorade, and all their kids around them have a Gatorade. And okay, I'll get you the Gatorade, So it's nice to hear you say that as someone who is in that situation and pretty far into it. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Sure.
Do you feel any more pressure now, knowing that you have reached this status where people are going to know you? Like, let's say you are in a country and you do grab a plastic bottle and people say, hey, you said no single, like, does any part of you worry about what other people will think now?
I try not to spend too much energy on that. I mean, people do that on social media even now, every once in a while. And I'll respond sometimes, but it's all about the context. And am I in an impossible situation? Are we all in an impossible situation in an airport, for example? Mm-hmm. Are you literally going to just not drink water in an area that's extremely dehydrating once you go up into the air, plus the EMFs that are blasting your body, stressing your body out even more? So you're damn right. I'm going to buy the only option I have so that my bigger vision and my support of my body is there. And that, again, we have to do the best we can with the situation. I am definitely not perfect and never going to say I'm perfect. I'm going to travel. I'm going to go out to those places. We have not created the solutions, but I am absolutely working on small, medium, and large solutions. So if people feel guilty, look in the mirror and do your own work. Quit projecting on people, to thine own self be true. We don't need that. I don't need that. You don't need that. We don't need that. Do the best you can. You don't know any context to anyone's life at all. So it's just such a waste of time and energy. I just don't have time for it. I just want people that are moving in the same direction, who are kind, who are warriors, who are powerful, who are filled up inside, full of love and compassion and purpose. Let's go. Like all the other chatter, I'm just not into it. It's not my jam. People can fight all they want and do all their other things, but I just don't, that's just not something I'm going to focus on.
No, thank you. And thanks for saying that, because that is an important point and can be applied to everything in life. I mean, there's so much finger pointing going on right now, and we need to back off that. Okay, so related to that, we've talked about strangers making comments when they don't need to be, but what about family, friends who, someone listening is thinking about becoming vegan, but their family is just not accepting of it, or people keep buying gifts for them that are plastic and or harmful to the environment. Any advice for that about loved ones who are well-intentioning, but it's not really helping the situation?
We can't change them, especially family. We have to literally let that go. And, this is something very personal to me. I've had a mom who's had 2 heart attacks and eats like crap. And the first program I gave her, I was 18 years old. And I've been trying everything under the sun to help her out. But the biggest thing, and I'll respond, but only if she wants it. I will no longer push. And so it's that letting go. You have to communicate. Like if someone's given you gifts that are not beneficial to you, or it's full of plastic, whatever it is, you get to communicate that and say it. Say, listen, thank you so much for the gift, but I'm either not going to use it, or it's full of this plastics, whatever the story is. I think it's important to communicate and share your truth, and then we have to let go. And we literally have no control over, certainly family, and what people are going to do. You can only lead. I've had several heart-opening questions with my mother, where I just said, Mom, it makes me feel like I might not see you again because of the way you're leading your life, and I'm scared. And and that's all I say. And I'm not going to say, do this, do that, all of that stuff. And then that puts her in judgment and shame and fear. And then it doesn't move anything forward. So it is, I mean, even the idea that we have even control over anything is kind of an illusion. That is just an ego to say that even part of me saying I'm a control freak is just a part of me that thinks that part of the ego thinks it has some degree of control. Well, guess what? I was, in the Amazon, I had no control and lost everything I owned. Yeah. So if there isn't the biggest surrender, and when I surrender, I'm also marvel at the essence of this world. I marvel at the grace that exists when we surrender. I marvel at our relationship with this life. And that's where the biggest gift I received from losing everything was the love I felt.
Yeah.
The love I felt through all my friends and that, if I needed to feel the depth of that love, I would burn my house down again, as gnarly as that sounds. It's what life is presenting to you without making it wrong or even right, but just that it happened. So receive that. And what's there? Like, what is that? That's the complexity and the beauty and the kaleidoscopic experience of life. It's like, we're just experiencing. We're experiencing.
Yeah. So. I mean, that's it though, isn't it? It's the being, not doing kind of mentality of just being present in your moment. And I know it's something many people are working on, myself included. So thank you for giving us a really heartfelt response to that question. So Darren, just to wrap up with one more question. This is from Tessa, who is age 11, who wants to know what is something the youth of tomorrow can do in their part to create a sustainable future.
Oh, that's beautiful. I have actually been thinking a lot about this, and I've been talking to youth like crazy. University students, several thousands actually. I was a part of the Younga group out of the UN, doing a big talk at the end of October. And this is one of the most powerful places. I don't know off the top of my head, but I do know that we need them. And I'm moving forward on curating a way, because that is one of the biggest things. They're inspired and they want to do something. They don't know what to do. I'm trying to create that what. Right. So we're curating, we're looking at conscious businesses where they're doing good socially, economically, environmentally, also curating a place for kids to come with information that we're curating, but it's also peer to peer. So I'm putting together the peer groups of those kids providing information to themselves.
Very cool.
In that way, because I don't know. I'm listening to them. I hired my goddaughter, who I saw born, and she just graduated from Emerson, was the head of her environmental group. And I grabbed her, and she is now, I'm putting her in the position of leading this thing. And we're literally on the fly. And I'm now today talking with another Gen Z who's created an app to help in this way. And we have another one that we're looking at. So that is a massive focus of mine right now.
Great. Thank you so much. And I will put links in the show notes to whichever things of those you give me. I'm going to talk about Barukas in the outro here. So I'm going to let you get, Darren, I know you've got to get to a meeting, but anything else you want to tell my listeners just as a quick, wrap up?
Yeah, Tina, this was great. I really appreciate your thoughtful questions and your essence, your spirit. I really had a good time, and I hope people start to make just better choices for themselves and the planet. That's really the goal.
Thank you. My friends, if you have a minute and you could leave a review on your favorite podcast player, Apple Podcasts, aka iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Spotify, or whatever else podcast player you use to listen to this podcast, or if you would subscribe to this podcast, you will help me get out in front of new runners to make our tribe even bigger and even better. It might not seem like you as one person can make a difference, but really it helps a lot. And it shows me you appreciate the hard work I put in for those. Thank you so much. Thank you to Darren for coming on the show, and thank you to you for listening. I appreciate you taking the time to check in with this podcast. I know there's plenty of places you could be going for your podcast, and I appreciate you getting to know Darren, listening to what he has to say, and getting to know me as well. I love to get to know you, and I love to hear from you. So thank you for listening. That episode definitely went in a bit of a different direction to what I expected, but I felt that was only a good thing, and I loved hearing the updates that he has and the exciting things that he is working on. Really important. You can find links to the things that we talked about today in the show notes by going to tinamuir.com/episode 214. You can also go support my sponsors there. And you're also supporting me when you go purchase a product from my sponsors. You can use code TINA15 at tracksmith.com. You can go get yourself a Brighton base layer long sleeve, or you could get yourself some Harrier shorts if it's still warm enough where you are to be able to run in shorts. I am loving Tracksmith, not just for their clothes and the quality, but also just for the personality behind the brand, the fact that they stand up for what they believe in. And you can also go to athleticgreens.com/Tina to go get yourself that 75 whole food source ingredients product that I love. I take it every single morning, and you get 1 year supply of vitamin D3 and K2 with your order. That will keep you going through these winter months where we're not getting as much sunshine as we had been in the past. Go check them out. Go support them. There is a reason I work with these brands. I am very picky. And I just absolutely love them. And finally, I just want to tell you about our featured Black-owned business of the week, which is Team Onyx. Yes, the team that Corey was a part of. He mentioned them a few weeks ago, competing in the world's toughest race, Eco Challenge Fiji. But there are also many more athletes on their roster who are doing some amazing things. They're doing things as a team. They're doing things on their own. And they're just a great community to go support. You can help to fuel a group who are really trying to change things. And you can go to team-onyx.com. That's team-onyx.com to check out more about Team Onyx. Now, next week, we will be hearing from Sabrina Pace Humphreys, just this wonderful woman from England who has been breaking all kinds of records and just being a real positive light in this world. It's one we are going to need. So be sure to tune in next Friday to get that episode. And on Monday, I will also have an episode with Emma Roca. That is our World's Toughest Race Eco Challenge Fiji next episode. Emma from Team Summit. My honestly favorite person from the series, who I want to be when I grow up. I admire Emma so much and I can't wait to hear what you think. All right, I'll see you next Friday.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.